Cannibalism, condemned by church and state, was abandoned as quickly as it had been taken up. The last known cannibal feast took place in the late 1950s, but by then, for the women and children who had been eating at the funeral feasts, it was already too late. For by this time, the foray had been struck by a disease unlike anything they'd seen before. During the early 60s, Onura saw his family members succumb one by one.
Kuru is a kind of sickness that comes up in the body. It causes the person to shake, and they then become unstable when walking about, and they fall down. It's a kind of sickness where the body shakes. It begins slowly so the person can go to the gardens and keep gardening. In the beginning, their hearing and body is all right. Then the shaking of the body begins and continues, and they have to give up gardening, return to the house where they stay for another 3 or 4 months. Then they lie down completely. Then they can't stand up. Then they lie in bed, and people come and carry them out and put them in the sun. Then they are taken back inside the house, where they die.
Good day.
Without exception, the disease was fatal. By the late 1950s, it would have been hard to find a village unaffected by Kuru. The first outside witnesses noticed the smiling grimace that many of the victims wore. They called it the laughing death. The foray named the disease after their word for shivering. They called it Kuru. By the time of Shirley Lindenbaum's arrival in the early 1960s, the foray were in crisis.
Kuru had an extraordinarily high incidence in this area at the time. It was mainly women, young girls and women in their childbearing years who were victims of the disease. It was an extremely emotional period. In every village you would find 2 or 3 women who were prostrate or staggering around in various phases of the disease, and it was the main topic of conversation.
The foray were bewildered. They blamed Kuru on sorcery. So at first did the Western doctors who saw it. They thought it was an hysterical reaction to local fear of sorcerers. That view soon gave way to the realization that this was a new disease, an incurable killer with an unknown cause. Autopsies of the victims revealed little. They showed brain damage, but no visible agent. Pathologists had seen this pattern only once before, in victims of an exceedingly rare disorder called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or CJD. But since the cause of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease was unknown, the comparison did not offer much help.